Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku prepared for you. Like a pro? Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The pavement tasted like iron and asphalt. It was a flavor Izuku Midoriya was intimately familiar with, a recurring sensory detail in the biography of his short, miserable life. He lay on his side in the alleyway behind Aldera Junior High, the rough concrete scraping against his cheek. His ribs throbbed in a rhythmic, dull staccato, a counterpoint to the sharp stinging of the burns on his shoulder. Smoke curled up from the fabric of his gakurin, carrying the scent of singed wool and caramelized sugar, the signature olfactory trace of Katsuki Bakugo. Stay down, Deku, Bakugo's voice growled, reverberating off the brick walls. It wasn't just anger, it was dismissal. It was the tone one used for a pebble kicked along the road. Don't you get it? You're an NPC. A glitch. Stop dreaming. Izuku didn't move. He listened to the retreating footsteps of Bakugo and his lackeys. He listened to their laughter fade into the ambient noise of Mizurufu's city traffic. Men are not created equal. That was the first lesson he had learned at age 4. But as Izuku pushed himself up, wincing as his bruised intercostal muscles protested, he realized he had been interpreting the lesson wrong for 8 years. He had treated that sentence as a period. A full stop. A conclusion that dictated his ceiling. He dusted off his uniform. His hand trembled, not from fear, but from the adrenaline crash. He reached into the nearby koi pond, where his notebook, Hero Analysis for the Future Volume 9, was bobbing like a dead fish, and fished it out. The pages were soaked, the ink running in chaotic, weeping streams. He looked at the smudged drawing of a hero costume he had designed. It looked pathetic. It looked like a child's fantasy. Inequality. Izuku whispered, his voice cracking. If the equation of humanity was unequal, then the variables were skewed. Bakugo was born with a variable of value equals 100. Izuku was born with value equals 0. Most people looked at that 0 and wept. Izuku had spent years weeping. He had spent years waiting for a teacher, a doctor, or All Might himself to come down from the heavens and change the 0 to a 1. But that wasn't how math worked. That wasn't how reality worked. If your base variable is 0, you don't wait for it to change. You add other variables to the equation until the sum forces the world to acknowledge you. Izuku gripped the soggy notebook until his knuckles turned white. Something inside him, a fragile, glass-like hope that he had been cradling since childhood, didn't break. Instead, it hardened. It crystallized into something sharp. Cold. Durable. He didn't go home immediately. He walked to the local municipal library. He sat at a table in the back, shivering slightly in his damp uniform, and opened a fresh, dry notebook from his backpack. He didn't write Hero Analysis for the Future Volume 10. He uncapped a black pen and wrote, in neat, angular kanji, Project, Optimization, Objective, UA High School Admission, Timeline, 36 months. If I am not special, Izuku murmured to the empty library stacks, then I must be effective. Year 1, the foundation. The first month was hell. Izuku stood in front of the mirror in his bathroom. He was 12 years old, 145 centimeters tall, and weighed as much as a wet towel. His arms were twigs, his legs were sticks. He had asthma when the pollen count was high, and he flinched when people raised their voices. Assessment, he said to his reflection. The voice was shaky, but the eyes were steady. Strength, negligible. Speed, below average. Durability, low. Intellect, above average. Tactical awareness, high potential. He needed a teacher. But he couldn't go to a hero gym. Those places were expensive, flashy establishments catering to kids with quirks who wanted to learn how to pose while shooting lasers. They wouldn't know what to do with a quirkless boy. They would treat him with pity, and pity was a waste of time. He found what he was looking for in the squalid underbelly of the shopping district, wedged between a pachinko parlor and a failing ramen shop. Black mat judo muay thai. The sign was peeling. The windows were opaque with grime. It smelled of stale sweat, tiger balm, and unwashed canvas. When Izuku walked in, the owner, a scarred man in his 50s named Takeda, didn't look up from his newspaper. Classes for kids are Tuesdays and Thursdays. No refunds. I don't want a class, Izuku said. Takeda looked up. He saw a green-haired boy who looked like he might break if a strong wind hit him. Then you're lost, kid. Library is 2 blocks east. I have no money, Izuku continued, ignoring the dismissal. But I have time. I will clean the mats. I will scrub the showers. I will organize the equipment. I will do your bookkeeping. In exchange, you let me train. Takeda laughed. It was a dry, rasping sound. You want to be a fighter? You look like a gust of wind would fold you. I'm not a fighter, Izuku corrected. I'm a student. And I need to learn how to take down people who are stronger, faster, and bigger than me. Takeda put down the paper. He looked at Izuku, really looked at him. He saw the bruises on the boy's neck, the fading burns on his shoulder peeking out from his collar. He saw the desperate, terrifying hunger in the boy's eyes. It wasn't the hunger for glory. It was the hunger for survival. Mop bucket is in the back, Takeda grunted. If the mats aren't spotless by the time I finish this cigarette, you're out. Izuku scrubbed the mats until his hands blistered. That was the beginning. For the first 6 months, Izuku didn't throw a single punch. Takeda made him run until he vomited. Then he made him run some more. He made him hold planks until his abdominal muscles felt like they were tearing. He made him do grip strength exercises until Izuku couldn't hold a pencil at school. You have no quirk, Takeda told him one rainy Tuesday, pressing a heavy boot into the small of Izuku's back as he struggled to hold a push-up position. That means you have no margin for error. A hero with super strength can afford to be sloppy. They can take a hit. You take a hit, you die. So, don't get hit. Izuku internalized this. Don't get hit. He analyzed the physics of evasion. He studied the geometry of the human body. He realized that fighting wasn't about anger. It was about leverage. It was mathematics. By the end of the first year, the twigs that were his arms had developed cords of lean, dense muscle. He wasn't bulky. Bulk was heavy, and heavy was slow, but he was wired. He stopped taking notes on heroes' cool moves. He started breaking down their inefficiencies. Kamui Woods, he wrote in his new journal, labeled Tactical Countermeasures Volume 1. Reliance on pre-binding monologue allows villains 2.4 seconds of reaction time. Flammable weakness. Suggestion: carry fire retardant foam canisters. Empty lady. Excessive collateral damage. Per center of gravity in giant form. A targeted strike to the popliteal fossa back of the knee would incapacitate her instantly. He looked at the page. It felt blasphemous to dissect heroes like this. But then he remembered the alleyway. He remembered the feeling of helplessness. He kept writing. Year 2, the acceleration. Midoriya, you're sleeping in class again. Izuku snapped his head up. The math teacher was glaring at him. The class snickered. Bakugo, sitting 3 rows ahead, didn't turn around, but small explosions popped in his palm. I apologize, Sensei, Izuku said, his voice level. I was reviewing the quadratic formula variables. We're on history, Midoriya. Right. My apologies. He hadn't been sleeping. He had been visualizing a judo hip toss. Specifically, how to execute an osotogari on an opponent who could secrete nitroglycerin from their palms. Izuku's life had become a rigid grid of time management. 5 to 6:30, conditioning run. He had started cleaning up Dagoba Municipal Beach Park. Not because anyone asked him to, but because drag-hauling refrigerators through sand was excellent for posterior chain development. The beach was a graveyard of trash, a monument to apathy. Izuku treated it as his personal gym. 8 to 1500 hours school. He utilized this time for mental rest and tactical study. He finished his homework during lunch breaks so his evenings were free. 1530 to 1930, the dojo. Takeda had started teaching him judo and basic Muay Thai clinching. Izuku learned how to fall without breaking bones. He learned how to choke a man out in 6 seconds. He learned that the groin, eyes, and throat were the great equalizers of mankind. 20 to 2200 hours parkour. This was Izuku's own addition to the curriculum. He realized that in an urban environment, verticality was a weapon. He spent his nights traversing the rooftops of Muzurifu. At first, he was clumsy, scraping his shins and bruising his heels. But he applied his analytical mind to movement. He studied fluid mechanics and applied them to his own body. Flow. Momentum conservation. One night, skipping across a gap between two apartment complexes, he felt it. For a split second, suspended in the air above the street lights, he didn't feel quirkless. He felt weightless. He landed in a roll, coming up seamlessly into a sprint. He was fast. Much faster than anyone realized. His relationship with his mother, Inko, shifted during this year. She had watched him transform with a mix of terror and awe. She saw the scars accumulating on his hands. She saw the protein shakes, the endless icing of sore joints, the dark circles under his eyes. One evening, she walked into his room while he was rest-stitching a tear in his training GI. "Izuku," she said softly. "Why are you doing this to yourself?" He didn't look up from the needlework. "Because I have to, Mom. You know Yue is." She trailed off. She couldn't say it. She couldn't say impossible. "I know the statistics," Izuku said, snapping the thread with his teeth. He turned to her. His face had lost its baby fat. His jawline was defined, his eyes sharp and hard like emerald flint. "Acceptance rate is less than 0.2%. For a quirkless applicant, the theoretical probability is 0. Inko gripped the doorframe. "Then why?" "Because probability is just a prediction based on past data," Izuku said, standing up. He wasn't the crying child anymore. "I'm introducing new data." Inko looked at her son and realized he had grown up while she was busy worrying. She walked over, took his hand, the hand that was calloused and rough, and squeezed it. "I can't give you fire breath or telekinesis," she whispered. "But I can make sure you eat enough to feel, whatever this is." The next day, the fridge was stocked with high-protein meats and vegetables. It was a silent pact. She wouldn't stop him. She would just make sure he survived the attempt. Year 3, the finished product. By the time Izuku turned 14, the change was absolute. He stood 166 centimeters. Not a giant, but he held himself with a posture that suggested coiled steel. He wore his school uniform properly, but the fabric strained slightly across the shoulders. He had finished cleaning Dagoba Beach 3 months ahead of schedule. The locals were baffled. The trash was just gone. The beach was pristine white sand. Izuku had stood there at sunrise on the final day, staring at the horizon. He didn't scream "I am here" or cheer. He just checked his watch, noted his heart rate 45 BPM resting, and walked home to shower. He had become a ghost in his own school. He stopped muttering. He stopped flinching. When bullies approached him, he didn't run. He just looked at them. He looked at their stance, their weight distribution, their openings. He dissected them with his eyes. Most of them found it so unsettling they just walked away. They called him creepy now, instead of useless. Creepy is fine, Izuku thought. Creepy means they are hesitating. Hesitation is defeat. But today was different. Today was the day the career forms were due. The classroom buzzed with the chaotic energy of teenagers drunk on their own potential. The teacher, a man who had long since given up on controlling them, stood at the podium. "I assume you all want to be heroes," the teacher shouted, tossing the papers into the air. The class erupted. Quirks flared, eyes extended, fingers turned to stone, minor telekinesis rattled the desks. Yes, you all have wonderful quirks," the teacher said. "But no quirk usage in school. Get a hold of yourselves. Teach," a lazy, arrogant voice cut through the noise. Katsuki Bakugo sat with his feet on the desk. He hadn't changed much in 3 years, except his ego had calcified into a diamond-hard arrogance. "Don't lump me in with these extras. They'll be lucky to end up as sidekicks to some D-lister. I'm going for the top." The class shouted in protest, but Bakugo just sneered. "I aced the mock exams. I'm the only one here with a shot at UA." "Oh, that's right," the teacher said, checking his clipboard. "Bakugo is aiming for UA High." The class murmured in awe. "Actually," the teacher added, peering over his glasses, "Midoriya is also applying to UA, isn't that right?" Silence. Absolute, vacuum-sealed silence. Then, the explosion. Not a literal one, but a roar of laughter. The class convulsed with it. "Midoriya? No way! You can't get into the hero course with just studying. He's gonna die in the entrance exam. Izuku didn't look up from his desk. He was reading a book on advanced structural integrity of urban materials. He turned a page. Bam! An explosion slammed into his desk, incinerating the corner of his book. Heat washed over his face. Izuku didn't flinch. He didn't blink. He slowly lowered the book and looked up. Bakugo was looming over him, smoke rising from his palm. His eyes were manic. Deku. You bastard. Are you mocking me? I'm applying to a school, Katsuki, Izuku said. His voice was calm, almost bored. He hadn't called him Kaken in 2 years. It has nothing to do with you. Nothing to do with me? Bakugo roared. You're quirkless. You're a pebble. You're worse than these rejects. You think you can stand in the same ring as me? He swung his right hand, a hook aimed straight for Izuku's face. It was a telegraph move. Bakugo always led with his right. He was too used to people cowering. In the old timeline, Izuku would have cowered. In this timeline, Izuku's left hand shot up. He didn't block the explosion. That would be stupid. He caught Bakugo's wrist, his fingers digging into the pressure points between the radius and ulna. In the same motion, he shifted his hips, sliding his leg behind Bakugo's, and pulled. Leverage. Bakugo's world flipped. He slammed onto the linoleum floor of the classroom with a wind-knocking thud. The laughter in the room died instantly. Bakugo lay on his back, staring up at the ceiling, confused. Izuku was still sitting in his chair. He hadn't even stood up. He still had hold of Bakugo's wrist, twisting it just enough to keep the palm facing away from him, neutralizing the firing line. You have a bad habit of overextending on your right hook, Izuku said quietly. And you rely too much on the intimidation factor of your quirk. If your opponent doesn't fear the noise, your form is sloppy. Bakugo's face went red. He scrambled to his feet, explosions crackling violently. You, Bakugo! Midoriya! The teacher shouted, finally waking up from his stupor. Stop this immediately. Bakugo vibrated with rage. He looked at Izuku, really looked at him, and saw something that terrified him. He didn't see fear. He saw calculation. This isn't over, Deku, Bakugo hissed, retreating to his seat but keeping his eyes locked on Izuku. Izuku smoothed out the singed page of his book. I know. The variable enters the equation. School ended. Izuku packed his bag with methodical precision. He ignored the whispers of his classmates as he walked out. He knew what they were saying. Did you see that? Was that a quirk? Since when can Deku fight? It didn't matter. Their opinions were irrelevant data. He took his usual route home. He needed to stop at the grocery store to pick up chicken breast and broccoli. He was cycling his carb intake for peak performance during the entrance exam, which was 10 months away. He turned into the underpass. It was a shortcut, dark and quiet. His footsteps echoed on the concrete. Step. 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 He stopped. A sound. A wet, shifting sound. Like mud sliding down a drain. Izuku didn't turn around slowly like a horror movie victim. He spun on his heel, dropping his bag, his hands coming up into a grappling stance. From the sewer grate, a massive, gelatinous mass surged upward. It formed a face, huge, manic eyes and a mouth full of liquid teeth. A medium-sized invisibility cloak. The villain gurgled. Villain. Fluid body type. No solid limbs to grapple. Physical strikes will be ineffective due to viscosity. Danger level high. Don't worry, the sludge monster lunged. It'll only hurt for 45 seconds. Izuku moved. He dodged the first tendril, rolling to the left. He grabbed a handful of dirt from the edge of the tunnel floor. Weakness? Eyes. Mouth. The fluid must be held together by surface tension or a core. The villain was fast. A wave of sludge slammed Izuku against the tunnel wall. The impact knocked the wind out of him. The slime forced its way into his mouth and nose. It tasted like sewage and death. Suffocation mechanic. He's trying to invade the lungs. Panic flared. The lizard brain screamed die die die. Izuku crushed the panic. He engaged the logic. I cannot breathe. I have approximately 90 seconds of conscious oxygen because of my free diving training. I cannot punch him off. His hand scrabbled against his backpack, which was pinned next to him. He found the strap. Inside the side pocket was his geometry set. A compass. Sharp metal point. He couldn't swing his arm. The sludge was too heavy. Think. The eyes. The villain's giant, bulging eyes were staring right at him, mocking him. Izuku didn't flail. He waited. He let his body go limp for a fraction of a second, feigning unconsciousness. The villain laughed. That was EA. Izuku drove the metal compass point straight into the villain's left eye. Arg! The sludge recoiled. The grip loosened. Izuku gasped, sucking in air. He didn't waste time screaming. He rolled away, coughing up slime. You little brat! The villain shrieked, clutching his liquid eye. I'll kill you! He surged forward again, angry now, jagged spikes of sludge forming. Izuku stood his ground. He grabbed a loose metal pipe lying near the drainage ditch. He wasn't going to win. He knew that. The mass difference was too great. But he didn't need to win. He needed to stall. Come on, Izuku rasped, holding the pipe like a bow staff. The sewer cover behind the villain exploded. Have no fear. The voice was booming, heroic, and distinctly American in its cadence. The sludge villain froze. Izuku lowered the pipe. For I am here. All Might stood at the tunnel entrance. He was massive, a pillar of justice in a mundane suit, carrying a plastic bag of groceries. The villain panicked. He lashed out at All Might. All Might didn't even blink. He drew back a fist. Texas. Smash! The wind pressure alone was like a hurricane. Izuku had to stab the pipe into the ground to anchor himself. The sludge villain was vaporized, not killed, but scattered into a million harmless droplets that rained down on the concrete. Silence returned to the tunnel. Izuku stood there, dripping with slime, chest heaving. All Might laughed, a boisterous sound. Apologies for getting you caught up in my justice ing. I lost him in the sewer system. You okay, young man? Izuku looked at the number 1 hero. The symbol of peace. The man whose poster hung on his wall. The old Izuku would have fainted. He would have asked for an autograph. He would have cried. The new Izuku wiped the slime from his face. He stood up straight. He assessed the hero. Massive muscle density. Perfect posture. But left side guarding? He's favoring his left respiratory processing. A hidden injury? I'm fine, Izuku said, his voice steady. Thank you for the assistance. Your arrival was timely. All Might blinked. He wasn't used to teenagers speaking like police reports. Right. Well, I must be off. Evil never sleeps. All Might gathered the unconscious sludge villain into empty soda bottles with blinding speed. He turned to launch himself into the sky. Wait, Izuku said. All Might paused, crouching. I really have no time. I don't want an autograph, Izuku said. He took a step forward. I have a question. A logistical one. All Might looked at the boy. Green hair, intense eyes, stance of a fighter, but no visible quirk aura. Can a person with 0 quirk factor become a pro-hero if they optimize every other variable to the peak of human conditioning? All Might froze. The smile didn't falter, but the eyes dimmed slightly. Without a quirk? Yes. No powers. Just strategy, technology, and martial arts. Can it be done? Logically. All Might looked at the boy. He felt the phantom pain in his side. He thought of the villains capable of leveling cities with a sneeze. He thought of the fragility of a normal human body. He prepared to give the standard answer. The kind answer. It's good to dream, but try the police force. But then he looked at Izuku's hands. He saw the calluses. He saw the scarred knuckles. He saw the way the boy stood, balanced, ready to move. He saw the metal pipe the boy had been willing to use against a fluid monster. This wasn't a dreamer asking for permission. This was a soldier asking for a mission report. All Might's time limit pinged in the back of his mind. Smoke began to leak from his mouth. Shit, All Might muttered, the hero persona slipping. Poof. The steam exploded, enveloping the hero. Izuku didn't scream. He watched as the smoke cleared, revealing the skeletal, emaciated form of Toshinori Yagi. Izuku tilted his head. Metabolic collapse? Izuku asked, pulling out a notebook. Or a transformation quirk with a severe caloric deficit requirement? Toshinori coughed up a splash of blood. He looked at the kid in shock. You're not freaking out? I'm analyzing, Izuku said, clicking his pen. You're all might. The skeletal structure matches. The eyes are the same. But the mass is gone. Why? Toshinori sighed, sliding down the tunnel wall to sit. You're a weird kid. I'm an efficient kid. Toshinori lifted his shirt, revealing the horrific, spiderweb scar on his side. 5 years ago. A villain did this. Half my respiratory organs were destroyed. My stomach is gone. I can only do hero work for about 3 hours a day. Izuku stared at the wound. He didn't look away. He studied the tissue damage. Toxic chainsaw? Izuku asked. You know your stuff. But no, he couldn't do this. This was someone else. Toshinori pulled his shirt down. So, to answer your question, kid, look at me. I have the strongest quirk in the world, and I look like this. The job is dangerous. It eats you alive. He looked Izuku in the eye. Pros are always risking their lives. Quirk or not. But without power? Can you save people when a building is falling on them? Can you stop a villain like that sludge guy without holding him back? Izuku looked at his hands. I stabbed him in the eye. It bought me 12 seconds. 12 seconds, Toshinori repeated. And if I hadn't shown up in 13, I would have died, Izuku admitted. Exactly. Toshinori stood up, shaky but tall. I cannot in good conscience tell you that you can become a hero without a quirk. It's not just about fighting. It's about the overwhelming force required to save others from the impossible. Dream, young man. But make your dreams attainable. The police force gets little credit, but they are heroes too. Toshinori turned to leave. He felt bad. He always felt bad crushing a dream. But it was better than watching the kid die. Izuku stood there. The words landed heavy. No, but unlike 5 years ago, the words didn't crush him. They were just data. Negative data. Variable. All might. Output negative. Conclusion. Prove him wrong. Izuku picked up his backpack. He didn't cry. He just tightened his jaw. He started to walk out of the tunnel. Boom. An explosion rocked the district. A plume of smoke rose a few blocks away. That direction. Izuku muttered. The shopping district. Toshinori had already left. But Izuku realized something. The bottles. He looked at the ground where All Might had landed. The impact of the jump. He dropped them, Izuku realized. He started running. Not toward safety. Toward the smoke. The test of the professional. When Izuku arrived, the scene was chaos. Fire was everywhere. The sludge villain had escaped and was thrashing in the center of the street. Heroes were standing around useless. Death Arms was holding back the crowd. Kamui Woods was struggling with the fire. Empty Lady couldn't enter the narrow street. I can't get a grip. My quirk isn't suitable for this. Excuses, Izuku thought, scanning the scene. Inefficiency. Then he saw the hostage. Buried in the muck, a face was gasping for air. Ash blonde hair. Red eyes wide with terror. Bakugo. The villain was trying to possess him, using Bakugo's explosions to keep the heroes at bay. It was a stalemate. And Bakugo was suffocating. Izuku stood at the back of the crowd. Analysis. Heroes static. Waiting for a suitable quirk user. Villain, distracted by the explosions. Fluidity is high, but the eyes are exposed. Hostage, high volatility. Struggling creates more openings for the sludge to enter. Time to asphyxiation, less than 60 seconds. Izuku didn't think about his legs moving. He didn't think I must save him. He thought, the tactical situation requires immediate intervention. He dropped his backpack. He sprinted. Hey! Kid! Get back! Death Arms shouted. Izuku ignored him. He vaulted over the police barricade with a perfect Kong vault. He hit the pavement running. The sludge villain saw him. You again? Die! Bakugo gargled, letting off an explosion. The explosion created a smoke screen. Izuku didn't run blindly. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his belt. It was a heavy canvas tactical belt with a solid metal buckle. He whipped it out as he ran. Target, the eye. Again. I'll squash you. The villain lashed out with a tendril. Izuku slid. Like a baseball player stealing home, he slid under the tendril, the asphalt shredding his pants. He popped up inside the villain's guard. He swung the belt buckle. Crack! It struck the villain's right eye with surgical precision. The villain howled, flinching back. The grip on Bakugo's mouth loosened for a second. Kaken! Izuku yelled. Breathe, Deku? Bakugo coughed. What the hell? Izuku didn't stop. He began to claw at the sludge around Bakugo's collarbone. But he wasn't just clawing. He was digging his fingers into the fluid, looking for the solid purchase of Bakugo's clothes to lever him out. Why are you here? Bakugo screamed, tears mixing with the grime. Because you looked like you needed help, Izuku grunted, dodging a sludge spike. And the pros are just watching. The villain recovered. I'm going to end you both. A massive wave of sludge rose up, blocking out the sun. It was going to crush them. Izuku looked at it. He couldn't dodge this. He stepped in front of Bakugo, raising his arms in a Muay Thai guard. It was futile, but it was instinct. Calculated probability of survival, 0%. Variable, introduction of external force. Wind, massive, overwhelming wind. Izuku felt a hand grab the back of his shirt. Another hand grabbed Bakugo. I really am pathetic. All Might was there. In his muscle form, pushing past the limit. Blood sprayed from his mouth, but his smile was furious. I told you off, but I didn't practice what I preached. Pros are always risking their lives. All Might didn't punch the villain. He punched the air in front of the villain. Detroit. Smash! The air pressure changed the weather. An updraft ripped the sludge apart, scattering the villain into mist. Rain began to fall from the sudden atmospheric shift. The crowd went silent. Then they roared. The verdict. The aftermath was a study in contrast. The heroes scolded Izuku. That was reckless! Kamui shouted. You have no quirk. You could have gotten yourself killed. You were a liability. Death Arms added. Izuku stood there, taking the scolding. He didn't bow his head. He looked them in the eye. You were standing there, Izuku said calmly. The heroes froze. You were waiting for someone with the right quirk, while a middle schooler suffocated. I created an opening. I neutralized the villain's vision. I bought time. If that is liability, then your definition of asset is flawed. The heroes sputtered. They weren't used to civilians talking back with vocabulary like that. Meanwhile, the media was fawning over Bakugo. So brave! What a powerful quirk! Bakugo ignored them. He was staring at Izuku. Later, walking home as the sun set, Izuku felt the exhaustion set in. His adrenaline was fading, leaving only the ache in his muscles. DKU, Izuku turned. Bakugo ran up to him, stopping a few meters away. He was panting. I didn't ask for your help. Bakugo yelled. And you didn't save me. All Might did. Don't look down on me, you quirkless nerd, Izuku sighed. I wasn't looking down on you, Katsuki. I was analyzing the situation. You were the variable that needed to be extracted. That's all. Bakugo grit his teeth. You're different. It pisses me off. He turned and stomped away. It was the closest thing to a thank you Izuku would ever get. Izuku continued walking. He reached his street. I am here. All Might slid out from a side street, in his muscle form, striking a pose. Young man! Poof. He reverted to skeleton Might, coughing up blood. We really need to get you to a doctor, Izuku said dryly. I'm fine, Tashinori wheezed. He straightened up, looking at Izuku. The playfulness was gone. Kid. I want to apologize. And I want to correct the record. Izuku stopped. At the tunnel, I told you that you couldn't be a hero without a quirk. I was judging you based on the standard model. But back there, those pros stood around. You moved. Tashinori placed a hand on his chest. Top heroes have stories about their school days. Most of them have one thing in common. Their bodies moved before they could think. Izuku's eyes widened. You looked that death in the face and you analyzed it. You fought it. You were the only hero on that street today. Tashinori took a deep breath. You asked me if a quirkless person can be a hero. My answer is still, it's nearly impossible. The gap is too wide. Izuku's shoulders slumped slightly. However, All Might continued grinning, blood on his teeth. If the gap is too wide, we build a bridge. Young man, you have the heart. You have the mind. You have the will. All Might pointed a bony finger at Izuku. You can become a hero. Izuku felt the tears welling up. He had trained his body to be hard. He had trained his mind to be cold. But he hadn't trained his heart for this. He fell to his knees, clutching his chest, and wept. But All Might said, stepping closer. I have a proposal. You said you wanted to optimize? To add variables? Izuku looked up, wiping his eyes. Yes? I have a variable for you. It's a secret. A torch passed down through generations. And I think, you're the vessel I've been looking for. All Might held out his hand. It's called One for All. Izuku looked at the hand. He looked at the greatest hero in the world offering him the ultimate power. He didn't take it immediately. He stood up. He pulled out his notebook. He opened a new page. Tell me the specifications, Izuku said, pen hovering. The transfer method, the biological load, and the risks. If I'm going to take this, I need to prepare. All Might stared for a second, then burst out laughing. You really are a pro. Izuku smiled, a sharp, confident smile. Let's get to work. The street lights of Muzudafa hummed with a low-frequency buzz, a sound that usually faded into the background of urban life. Tonight, however, it sounded to Izuku Midoriya like the countdown of a bomb. He stood on the sidewalk, the dried sludge of a villain still crusted in his hair, staring at the skeletal figure of Toshinori Yagi. All Might, the world's greatest hero, looked less like a pillar of justice and more like a stiff breeze would scatter his bones across the pavement. One for all, Izuku repeated. He didn't whisper it with reverence. He said it like he was testing the weight of a new tool. All Might wiped a smear of blood from his chin. That's right. My quirk was not something I was born with. It was passed down to me like a sacred torch. And now, I wish for you to take it. The silence that followed was heavy. A normal fanboy would have been screaming. They would have been on the ground, weeping, thanking the gods for this miracle. Izuku Midoriya took a notebook from his back pocket. You said pass down, Izuku said, flipping to a fresh page. The pen light of the street lamp illuminated his sharp features. That implies a biological transfer mechanism. Is it genetic? Blood-borne? Or is it energy-based, requiring a physical conduit? All Might blinked, his sunken eyes widening. Well, it's about DNA. And intent. DNA, Izuku muttered, scribbling furiously. Retroviral insertion? No, that would take too long. It must be immediate integration. And intent? That suggests a semi-sentient aspect to the quirk factor. A psychic imprint of previous users? Young man, All Might interrupted, holding up a hand. You're overthinking the science. The point is the spirit. The will to save. Izuku stopped writing. He looked up, snapping the notebook shut. The hard, analytical gleam in his eyes softened just a fraction. Spirit doesn't stop a building from crushing you, All Might. Physics does. Force does. Izuku stepped closer. You asked me to be your successor? That is a tactical designation. You are looking for a replacement asset because your own operating time is failing. All Might flinched. The boy's bluntness was like a physical blow. That's a cold way to put it. But not inaccurate. I accept, Izuku said. His voice was steady. But not because I want to be a symbol. Symbols are fragile. If you break, society breaks. We're seeing it happen right now. He gestured vaguely to the scar on All Might's side. I don't want to be a symbol. I want to be the solution. All Might looked at the boy. He saw the fire in those green eyes, not the wild, uncontrolled wildfire of a dreamer, but the focused, blue-hot flame of a welding torch. The solution, All Might mused. A small smile touched his lips. I like that. Very well. But be warned, young Midoriya. This power, it stockpiles energy. If your body isn't prepared, the transfer will blow your limbs off. Izuku didn't blink. Then we ensure the vessel is rated for the load. Meet me at Dagoba Municipal Beach Park tomorrow morning. 6 a.m. I'll be there at 0500, Izuku corrected. We have a timeline. The UA entrance exam is in 10 months. If we want to optimize the integration period, we cannot waste daylight. All Might's sweat dropped. Alright. 0500. The revised variable. The sun hadn't yet breached the horizon when All Might parked his truck at the edge of Dagoba Beach. He stepped out, holding a stack of papers, the aim to pass, American Dream Plan. It was a meticulously crafted schedule designed to build basic muscle mass through labor. He looked out at the beach and froze. In his memory, and in reality as of yesterday morning, this beach was a landfill. It was supposed to be choked with tires, refrigerators, and drift trash. It was empty. The sand stretched out, pristine and white, shimmering in the pre-dawn twilight. The only thing on the beach was a solitary figure doing handstand push-ups on a piece of driftwood. What the? All Might shouted, accidentally puffing into his muscle form for a second before deflating in shock. Izuku flipped off the driftwood, landing silently on the sand. He was wearing a compression shirt and shorts, his body glistening with sweat. Good morning, All Might, Izuku said, checking his watch. Heart rate 130. Warm-up complete. The trash, All Might stammered, gesturing to the empty expanse. Where is the trash? I moved it, Izuku said simply. Over the last 2 years. Part of my conditioning. Grip strength, posterior chain, irregular object lifting. The municipality picked up the final load last week. All Might looked at the papers in his hand. The American Dream Plan involved cleaning the beach. Well, All Might said, crumbling the papers. There goes that plan. I assumed you had a training regimen prepared, Izuku said, eyeing the crumpled ball of paper. May I see it? All Might handed it over. Izuku smoothed out the wrinkles. He scanned the schedule, his eyes darting back and forth. Dietary macros are decent, Izuku critiqued. But the sleep schedule is inefficient for muscle recovery. And the exercises, this is bodybuilding. Heroes need to look good. All Might defended weakly. Heroes need to function, Izuku corrected. Hypertrophy is useless if it compromises mobility. This plan builds show muscles. I need go muscles. Fast twitch fibers. Kinetic linking. He handed the plan back. I have my own regimen. I need you to augment it with quirk-specific conditioning. All Might sighed, scratching his head. He had expected a wide-eyed novice he could mold. Instead, he had acquired a miniature drill sergeant. Okay, smart guy. All Might grinned, the challenge sparking something in his chest. You think you're ready? Let's test that theory. Try to move me. All Might stood in the sand. He was in his skeletal form, but he was still 7 feet tall, and weighed a considerable amount. Sparring? Izuku asked. Grappling. If you can put me on my back, we skip the basics. Izuku didn't wait for a go. He dropped his center of gravity. He stepped in. All Might expected a tackle. He braced his legs. But Izuku didn't tackle. He stomped on All Might's instep, hard, and drove his shoulder into All Might's solar plexus while simultaneously hooking the hero's knee with his foot. Ouachigari. Inside leg reap. It was executed with terrifying speed. All Might, caught off guard by the dirty opening move, the foot stomp, lost his balance. He tipped backward. However, he was still the #1 hero. Even without OFA, his reflexes were inhuman. He hopped on one foot, regaining balance, and reached out to grab Izuku's collar. Izuku didn't resist the grab. He flowed with it. He grabbed All Might's wrist, twisted his hips, and used All Might's own recovery momentum against him. Suinage. Shoulder throw. All Might felt the world spin. For a brief, impossible second, his feet left the sand. He landed on his back with a thump. Silence. The waves lapped gently at the shore. Izuku stood over him, breathing rhythmically. You favor your left side to protect your injury. It creates a blind spot in your balance. All Might stared up at the morning sky. He started laughing. It was a wheezing, hacking laugh, but it was genuine. Okay. All Might shouted, puffing into his buff form as he kicked up to his feet. You pass. No basics for you. We go straight to the hard stuff. The grind, phase 1. The next 5 months were not a montage. They were a dissection of human limits. Izuku didn't just train, he engineered himself. Month 1. The vessel reinforcement. 1 for all places a massive hydraulic load on the skeletal structure, Izuku theorized during one of their lunch breaks. They were sitting on the seawall. Izuku was eating boiled chicken and broccoli. All Might was having a bento box. Hydraulic? All Might asked. Think of the quirk as high-pressure water, Izuku explained, sketching a diagram on a napkin. My bones are the pipes. If the pressure is too high, the pipes burst. We need to reinforce the pipe's bone density and the brackets holding them ligaments/tendons. So, the training shifted. No more standard lifting. Izuku engaged in impact conditioning. He struck sandbags filled with gravel until his knuckles bled, then healed, then bled again. He did plyometric drops from heights that made All Might wince, conditioning his legs to absorb shock. Eat this, All Might said one day, handing Izuku a gummy vitamin. What is it? Calcium and vitamin D supplements. And collagen. We need those bones thick. Izuku swallowed it dry. Understood. Month 2, Combat Strategy. You fight like a martial artist, All Might observed. Izuku was sparring with a robotic drone All Might had called in a favor to get from David's shield. Izuku had just dismantled it with a precise armbar. Is that a problem? Izuku asked. It is, All Might said, crossing his arms. Martial arts are designed for one-on-one duels with rules. Villain fights are riots. They are unfair. They are messy. You need to stop fighting to score points and start fighting to incapacitate. Izuku absorbed this. He changed his style. He stopped using clean judo throws. He started using the environment. He threw sand in the drone sensors. He used his belt to bind its limbs. He utilized parkour to bounce off walls for momentum strikes. Dirty, All Might nodded approvingly. Effective. Month 3, the theory of output. This was the hardest part. Without the quirk, they could only theorize. When you use 100%, Izuku asked, do you consciously push? Or do you just let go? I just clench my buttocks and yell smash. All Might said, giving a thumbs up. Izuku stared at him. That is the least scientific explanation I have ever heard. No wonder you can't teach. All Might coughed blood. I'm trying. If I use 100% instantly, I will explode, Izuku reasoned. I need a regulator. A mental valve. He spent hours in meditation. He visualized the switchboard. A massive breaker box in his mind. One for All wasn't a pool of water. It was a nuclear reactor. He couldn't just open the floodgates. He had to learn to trickle the power. 5%, Izuku muttered, sitting in the lotus position on the sand. I need to start at 5%. Month 4, the academic hurdle. Yui wasn't just a gym, it was a high school. Izuku's grades were already top of his class, but he wasn't satisfied with top. He wanted unreachable. He studied college-level physics to better understand his own movements. He studied chemistry to understand the composition of villains like the sludge monster or cement users. In class, he was silent. He finished exams in half the allotted time and spent the rest of the period reading books on quirk law and ethics. Bakugo noticed. Deku, Bakugo cornered him by the lockers. Izuku didn't flinch. He closed his locker calmly. Yes, Katsuki? You've been quiet. Too quiet. Bakugo's eyes narrowed. You planning a prank? Or did you finally realize you're a bug? Izuku looked at Bakugo. He saw the insecurity masked by rage. He saw the desperate need to be the protagonist. I'm busy, Izuku said. He walked past Bakugo. Bakugo grabbed his shoulder. His palm sizzled. Don't ignore me. Izuku didn't grapple him this time. He just stopped. He looked at the hand on his shoulder, then up at Bakugo's eyes. You're going to get in trouble for illegal quirk usage, Izuku said softly. It would be a shame to have your application to UA rejected because of a disciplinary record. Bakugo froze. We both want to go there, Izuku said. Don't sabotage yourself. He gently removed Bakugo's hand and walked away. Bakugo stood there, smoke curling from his fingers. He felt a chill. Deku wasn't scared. Deku wasn't even angry. Deku was managing him. Like he was a hazard to be mitigated. Damn you, Bakugo whispered. The intake. 10 months passed in a blur of sweat, blood, and calculus. The morning of the entrance exam arrived. The sky was a pale, bruised purple as the sun tried to break through the clouds. Dagoba Beach was silent. Izuku stood by the water, wearing his middle school uniform. He looked different. His neck was thicker. His shoulders were broad. His hands were rough, like sandpaper. He felt ready. Not confident. Confidence was an emotion, and emotions could be misleading, but prepared. All Might stood before him. He held a singular, long blonde hair. It is time, All Might said solemnly. Izuku stared at the hair. This is the delivery mechanism? Yes. Oral ingestion? Yes. The stomach acid won't denature the DNA? Young Midoriya, just eat the hair, Izuku sighed. This is highly unsanitary. He took the hair. He didn't hesitate. He popped it into his mouth and swallowed it dry. He waited. I don't feel anything, Izuku said. It takes time to digest, All Might explained. Listen to me. You have prepared your body. You have prepared your mind. But once that power activates, you are going to feel like you are holding a live wire. Don't let it control you. You control it. I am the operator, Izuku recited his mantra. The quirk is the machine. Go, All Might said, grinning. Show them what a quirkless hero looks like. Plus Ultra, Izuku nodded. He turned and marched toward the train station. He walked with a rhythm. Step. 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 He checked his internal diagnostics. No change. No surge of power. Digestion time varies, he thought. Average gastric emptying is 2 to 4 hours. The exam starts in 3 hours. It will be cutting it close. Gateways. The gates of UA High were massive. They were designed to intimidate. Hundreds of students were streaming in. Some were levitating, some had extra limbs, some were made of rock. It was a carnival of biology. Izuku walked through the crowd. He kept his breathing even. In 2, 3, 4. Out 2, 3, 4. He scanned the perimeter. Security cameras, high density. Motion sensors likely. The layout is defensible. Out of my way, Deku. Bakugo brushed past him, shouldering him roughly. Bakugo looked focused, his eyes staring straight ahead. He didn't stop to yell. He was in game mode too. Izuku adjusted his bag. He took a step forward and caught the toe of his shoe on a slightly raised paving stone. Trip hazard. Center of gravity shifting forward. Corrective step unavailable due to crowd density. He prepared to break his fall with a roll. Suddenly he stopped. He was floating. Whoa! Are you okay? Izuku looked around. A girl with a round face and brown bobbed hair had touched his shoulder. Her pinky was extended. It's my quirk, she smiled brightly. Sorry for using it without asking. But it's bad luck to fall on the exam day, right? Izuku tapped his feet together. Zero gravity. Removal of mass effect. Vestibular disruption minimal. Please release me, Izuku said calmly. Oh. Right. She pressed her fingertips together. Release. Izuku dropped the 2 inches to the ground. He landed softly. Thank you, he said. Your quirk affects the gravitational pull on specific objects. Does it have a weight limit? Does it induce nausea in the target? The girl blinked. Yeah, if I use it too much I throw up. I'm Uraraka Ochako, Midoriya Izuku. Nausea is a common side effect of inner ear disruption. Try focusing on a fixed point on the horizon. He bowed politely and walked away. Uraraka stood there, confused. He's intense. Inside the auditorium, the tension was palpable. Izuku took his seat. He pulled out a small notepad. Welcome to my live show. Present Mike screamed from the stage. Everybody say hey. Silence. Izuku wrote, Voice Hero, Present Mike, Sonic Amplification. Directional Capability. Weakness, underground or vacuum environments. Present Mike explained the rules. 3 types of robots. 1 point, 2 points, 3 points. And a 4th type. The 0-pointer. Izuku narrowed his eyes. An obstacle to be avoided. A shepherd mechanism to force students into specific zones. Excuse me. A tall boy with glasses and blue hair stood up, his hand chopping the air like a robot. May I ask a question? Hit me. The pamphlet says there are 4 robots, but you've only mentioned 3. Such an error would be shameful for a top-tier institution. And you, the boy spun around, pointing a finger directly at Izuku. You've been muttering to yourself this entire time. It's distracting. If you're here to sightsee, please leave immediately. The auditorium turned to look at Izuku. Izuku stopped writing. He slowly capped his pen. He stood up. The boy blinked, surprised by the confrontation. I wasn't muttering, Izuku said, his voice projecting clearly without shouting. I was vocalizing a tactical assessment of the robotic engagement zones. And regarding your question, the handout clearly labels the fourth robot as an arena trap. It is not a target. It is an environmental hazard. Izuku held up the pamphlet, pointing to the fine print. Read the footnotes before you interrupt the briefing. Izuku sat down. The auditorium was deadly silent. A few students snickered. The blue-haired boy turned bright red, bowed stiffly, and sat down. All right. President Mike shouted, breaking the tension. I like the energy. Let's get to it. The practical application. Battle Center B. It was a mock city. Concrete buildings, paved streets, traffic lights. It was impressive. Izuku stood at the gate. He was wearing a simple green tracksuit he had modified. Reinforced elbow pads, knee pads, and steel-toed boots. His belt was loaded with pouches containing small ball bearings and a coil of high-tensile wire. He stretched his hamstrings. Status check. Stomach empty. Energy levels high. One for all, silent. He frowned. He closed his eyes and searched for the power. He felt something. A hum. A low, distant vibration deep in his marrow. Like a power line buried under concrete. It's there, he thought. But I can't access it yet. The integration isn't complete. He opened his eyes. Plan B, kinetic optimization. He looked around. Uraraka was there, looking nervous. The blue-haired boy Ida was revving his engines. Izuku didn't look at them. He looked at the gate. The massive metal doors began to creak open. There was no buzzer. No go. Izuku moved. While the other students were waiting for a signal, Izuku sprinted. He exploded off the line, his acceleration tearing up the dirt. Hey! President Mick's voice boomed over the speakers. There are no countdowns in real battles. Follow that kid. The crowd panicked and surged forward, but Izuku already had a 50-meter lead. He turned the corner into the main street. Target acquired. A one-pointer. A unicycle-style robot with machine gun arms. It locked onto him. Target acquired. It raised an arm. Izuku didn't slow down. He analyzed the firing arc's standard ballistic trajectory. Slow servomotors. He slid. The rubber bullets chewed up the pavement where his head had been a second ago. Izuku popped up inside the robot's guard. Weakness. The gyroscopic sensor at the base of the neck. He didn't have super strength. He didn't need it. He jammed his steel-toed boot into the exposed wiring of the wheel joint. The wheel locked. Momentum did the rest. The robot, moving forward at speed, tripped over its own locked wheel. It crashed face first into the concrete. Crunch. The lens shattered. The lights went out. 1 point. Izuku didn't stop to celebrate. He kept running. Efficiency, he whispered to himself. He scaled the drainpipe, moving vertically. The streets were about to get crowded. The rooftops were the high ground. He reached the roof of a 3-story building. From here, he could see the layout. Cluster of 2-pointers 3 blocks east. A 3-pointer sniping from the bridge. He jumped. The gap between buildings was 4 meters. Izuku cleared it with a parkour precision jump, landing on the balls of his feet and rolling to dissipate the impact. He sprinted across the roof. Below him, a 2-pointer a scorpion-like tank was cornering a student with a laser naval quirk. Izuku didn't engage directly. He saw a water tower on the roof. The supports were rusted. Physics application, potential energy to kinetic energy. He kicked the locking pin of the support strut. It was rusted through. It just needed a nudge. The strut gave way. The water tower groaned and tilted. Izuku shoved it. The massive tank slid off the roof. It fell 3 stories. Crash. It landed directly on the 2-pointer, flattening it into scrap metal. 3 points. Nice assist. The naval boy shouted, confused. Izuku was already gone. The wall. 10 minutes in. Izuku was panting. Sweat dripped into his eyes. Score. 28 points. It wasn't enough. The combat types like Bakugo would be racking up 50 or 60 by now. Izuku's method, traps, environmental hazards, precise joint strikes, was effective, but slow. He needed high-value targets. He rounded a corner and skidded to a halt. 3 3-pointers. The heavy missiles types. They were blocking the alley. Target verified, the center robot droned. Izuku reached into his pouch. He pulled out the high-tensile wire. I can't punch through armor. But I can make them hit each other. He ran toward them. Fire, the robot commanded. A missile launched. Izuku slid under it. He threw the wire, the weighted end wrapping around the center robot's neck. He kept running, wrapping the other end around a lamppost. The robot turned to track him. The wire went taut. The robot jerked back, its aim ruined. It fired its second missile wildly. Boom! The missile hit the robot to its left. Izuku scrambled up the lamppost, jumped onto the center robot's back, and ripped out its primary sensor array with his bare hands. Blind, the robot spun around, swinging its massive arms. It struck the third robot, knocking it into a storefront. Izuku jumped clear as the chaotic melee resulted in all three machines tangling and short-circuiting. 37 points. He landed on the pavement, chest heaving. His knuckles were bruised. His shins were scraping. Limit approached, he analyzed. Muscle fatigue at 40%. Glucose levels dropping. He heard a rumble. Not a rumble. An earthquake. The other students stopped fighting. They looked down the main avenue. Dust rose like a tsunami. Through the cloud, a silhouette emerged. It was the size of a skyscraper, the 0-pointer. It moved, and the street cracked. Windows shattered from the vibration alone. Run! Someone screamed. It's huge! The students broke. Panic took over. They turned and fled, abandoning the exam. Izuku stepped back, shielding his eyes from the dust. Illogical, he thought. Why create a threat this large? It forces retreat. It tests courage? No, it tests risk assessment. The logical move is to retreat. He turned to run. Oh wow! A voice. Faint. Izuku stopped. He looked back. Through the dust, under a pile of rubble created by the 0-pointer's tread, lay Uraraka. Her leg was pinned under a slab of concrete. She was trying to lift it, but she was exhausted. The 0-pointer loomed over her. Its massive tread was descending. It wasn't stopping. Distance to target, 40 meters. Time to impact, 5 seconds. Weight of debris, approximate 400 kilograms. My current lifting capacity, 120 kilograms max. Calculation, impossible. Izuku froze. The logic said run. The logic said she was a casualty of the simulation. The logic said survival was priority 1. But the logic was quiet, and the hum in his bones got loud. It wasn't a hum anymore. It was a roar, one for all. It woke up. Maybe it was the adrenaline. Maybe it was the spirit All Might talked about. Maybe the quirk sensed someone needed saving. Heat flooded Izuku's veins. It wasn't the warm burn of exercise. It was the searing white heat of a lightning strike trapped under his skin. The red veins appeared on his legs. Glowing. Pulsing. Izuku didn't think about valves or percentages. He didn't think about equations. He moved. The pavement cracked under his foot. He didn't run. He vanished. He crossed the 40 meters in a blink. He appeared in front of the rubble. He didn't try to lift the rock. That would take too long. He looked up at the 0-pointer. The metal faceplate was descending toward them. Get back, Izuku commanded. His voice sounded like grinding stones. He crouched. He felt the power pooling in his legs. It felt like he had springs made of dynamite. Don't use 100%, a small voice in his head whispered. You'll die. If I don't use it, another voice answered, she dies. He compromised. He screamed in his mind. Spread it out. He didn't channel it all into one punch. He flooded his entire body. The glowing lines traced up his torso, his neck, his arms. Green lightning arced off him, shattering the nearby windows. Smash! He jumped. He didn't aim for the face. He aimed for the weak point he had identified in the pamphlet's schematic earlier, the neck joint connection. He launched himself like a missile. The air pressure shockwave cleared the dust instantly. He collided with the robot's neck. He pulled his fist back. Detroit. He felt his arm bones creaking. The muscles screaming. Smash! Impact! It wasn't a clean hole. It was a demolition. The force of the punch didn't just break the metal, it liquefied it. The shockwave tore the head of the zero-pointer clean off its shoulders. The massive body of the robot tilted backward, toppling away from Uraraka with a groan of twisting steel. Izuku hung in the air for a second, suspended in the cloud of debris. Then gravity reclaimed him. He was falling. High. Too high. He looked at his right arm. It was purple. Swollen. Broken? No. Fractured. Pain levels critical. Landing strategy. Required immediately. Legs, he hissed through gritted teeth. Do not break. He channeled the remaining sparks of power, the dregs of the energy, into his legs. He hit the ground. He didn't stick the landing, he rolled. He tumbled like a rag doll, bouncing, dissipating the kinetic energy. He came to a stop in the middle of the street. Smoke rose from his tracksuit. His right arm hung limp. His legs were trembling so violently he couldn't stand. But he was conscious. The dust settled. Silence covered Battle Center B. The students who had fled stopped. They turned around. They stared at the headless giant smoking in the distance. And they stared at the small, green-haired boy lying in the crater he had made. Taim's up! Present Mike screamed. Izuku stared at the sky. Equation complete, he thought, his vision blurring. Then he passed out. The massive steel gates of Battle Center B stood like the mouth of a fortress, casting a long, imposing shadow over the cluster of teenagers gathered at its base. The air was thick with tension, smelling faintly of grease, ozone, and nervous sweat. Izuku Midoriya stood at the front of the pack, his breathing controlled, his heart rate resting at a steady 58 beats per minute, while other examinees were stretching, vibrating with anxiety, or showing off their quirks in small bursts of light and sound. Izuku was still. He adjusted the straps of his modified utility belt. It was a simple canvas rig, heavy-duty but lightweight, containing pouches of ball bearings, a coil of high-tensile wire, and a small canister of resin spray. He wore steel-toed combat boots and reinforced elbow and knee pads over his green tracksuit. To the casual observer, he looked like a quirkless kid playing soldier. To the trained eye, he looked like a specialist preparing for a breach. Target acquisition is key, Izuku murmured to himself, his eyes scanning the visible portion of the mock city beyond the gates. The urban environment favors verticality. The robots are tracked or wheeled. Mobility is their weakness. To his left, the blue-haired boy from the auditorium, Tenya Ida, was revving the engines in his calves. He looked at Izuku with a mix of suspicion and concern. You have no quirk factor visible, Ida stated, his voice stiff. And your equipment is minimal. Are you certain you are prepared for this? This is a physical exam, not a written one. Izuku didn't turn his head. He kept his eyes on the gap between the doors. Preparation isn't about how much you carry, but how you use what you have. Good luck with your engines. The pavement looks slick from the morning mist. Adjust your traction control. Ida blinked, looking down at his exhaust pipes. I thank you. Suddenly, the massive gates began to grind open. There was no buzzer. No siren. Just the heavy mechanical groan of gears engaging. The crowd of students hesitated. They were waiting for a signal. They were waiting for permission. Inefficient, Izuku thought. In the real world, villains didn't count down. Disasters didn't wait for a starter pistol. Izuku moved. He didn't just run. He exploded from a standstill. His legs, conditioned by years of dragging trash across the Goba beach, propelled him forward with explosive power. He was a green blur against the gray concrete. Hey! President Mick's voice boomed from the observation tower, amplified to a deafening volume. What are you waiting for? There are no countdowns in real battles. Follow that kid. He's already got a head start. The realization hit the crowd like a shockwave. Panic erupted as hundreds of students surged forward, creating a bottleneck at the gate. But Izuku was already gone. He was 50 meters inside the city, alone. Phase 1, Kinetic Efficiency. The mock city was eerily quiet for exactly 3 seconds. Then, the sound of heavy machinery roared to life. Izuku turned a corner onto a main avenue. At the far end, 3 one-pointer robots wheeled out from an alleyway. They were unicycles with arms, their red optical sensors locking onto him instantly. Target acquired, the lead robot synthesized. Terminate. They accelerated. One-pointers were fast, designed to rush opponents. Izuku didn't slow down. He analyzed the vector. Speed, approximate 30 km per hour. Armor, light sheet metal. Weakness, stability. He didn't have super strength. He hadn't activated one for all. He didn't need to. As the lead robot lunged, swinging a mechanical arm, Izuku dropped into a slide. The asphalt shredded the outer layer of his tracksuit pants, but his knee pads held. He slid under the robot's swinging arm. As he passed underneath, he didn't strike the armor. He hooked his steel-toed boot behind the robot's single-wheel axle. Physics took over. The robot's upper body was moving forward at 30 km per hour. Its base suddenly stopped. Conservation of angular momentum. The robot flipped face first into the concrete with a sickening crunch of metal and glass. 1 point. Izuku rolled out of the slide, coming up to his feet without losing momentum. The second robot was already upon him. It fired a rubber bullet. Izuku tilted his head. The bullet whizzed past his ear, close enough to hear the air displace. Telegraphed, he noted. Firing cycle is 1.5 seconds. He closed the distance. He grabbed the robot's extended weapon arm with both hands. He didn't try to overpower it. He stepped in, hips checking against the robot's chassis. Ogashi. Major hip throw. Using the robot's own forward momentum and his lower center of gravity, he leveraged the machine off the ground. He slammed it down onto the third robot, which was just coming into range. Crash. Metal shrieked as the two machines tangled. The third robot's sensors shattered under the weight of its comrade. 3 points. Izuku stood over the wreckage. He wasn't panting yet. Inefficient, he critiqued the robots. No flank spacing. Predictable aggression algorithms. He checked his watch. 1 minute elapsed. Competition will be arriving in 30 seconds. He looked up. The buildings. Get high, he whispered. He sprinted toward a fire escape. He vaulted onto the railing, then leapt to the ladder. He ascended quickly, treating the vertical climb as a rest period for his running muscles. From the rooftop, the view was clear. He could see the swarm of students entering the city. Explosions of fire, ice, and lasers began to dot the landscape. Izuku pulled out his notebook, a small, waterproof field journal, and clicked his pen. He took 3 seconds to scan the layout. Most students are engaging in the main streets. This creates congestion and reduces target availability. The robots are spawning from the perimeter and moving inward. He snapped the notebook shut. The alleyways? The narrow corridors where large quirks like explosions or giant forms are a liability. That is my hunting ground. He ran to the edge of the roof and jumped. Phase 2, the grind. For the next 10 minutes, Izuku Midoriya was a ghost. He didn't fight like a hero. He fought like a saboteur. In a narrow alley, a 2-pointer the scorpion type was crawling down the wall. Its tail prepared to strike. Izuku wall ran on the opposite building, gaining height. As the tail struck the brick where he had been, Izuku pushed off, dropping onto the robot's back. He jammed a handful of ball bearings into the exposed gear joint of the tail. Grind. Snap. The gears seized. The tail locked up. The robot panicked, spinning in circles. Izuku hopped off, kicked the optical sensor into the casing, and vanished before it hit the ground. 15 points. 2 streets over, he encountered a 3-pointer. A massive, missile-firing dreadnought. It was cornering a student with a crystallization quirk. I can't break it. The student yelled, his diamond skin chipping against the robot's armor. Izuku didn't engage the front. He flanked. He pulled the high-tensile wire from his pouch. He sprinted past the robot, wrapping the wire around its ankle joint, then dove behind a mailbox, wrapping the other end around the heavy steel post. The robot stepped forward to crush the diamond student. The wire went taut. The massive machine tripped. It fell like a chopped tree, crashing into a parked car. The impact dislodged its battery casing. Izuku stepped out, walked up to the exposed battery, and ripped the connecting cables. The lights died. 45 points. Who are you? the crystal student asked, staring at the quirkless boy who had just tripped a tank. Move, Izuku said, not unkindly. You're in the open. Find cover. Izuku was moving again. He was racking up points, but he felt the toll. His knuckles were bruised inside his gloves. His shins ached from the impacts. His lungs burned. Stamina at 70%. Hydration levels dropping. Keep moving. He turned a corner and nearly collided with Katsuki Bakugo. Bakugo was covered in soot, grinning maniacally. He had just blasted the head off a three-pointer. DKU. Bakugo roared, seeing him. What the hell are you doing here? Get out of my way before you get killed. Izuku didn't stop. He vaulted over the wreckage of Bakugo's kill. Check your 6, Katsuki. Izuku shouted as he passed. Bakugo spun around. A one-pointer had been sneaking up behind him. Bakugo blasted it, but scowled. Don't tell me what to do. Izuku ignored him. He was calculating. Current score, 52 points. Based on previous year's data, the cutoff is usually around 40 to 50. I am safe. But safe is not optimal. Safe is not plus ultra. He needed more. He entered the industrial district of the Mach City. Here, the robots were denser. He fought with a rhythm. Dodge, redirect, dismantle. Dodge, redirect, dismantle. He used the detached robot arm as a club to smash sensors. He lured two robots into colliding with each other. He used the resin spray to blind a two-pointer, causing it to walk off a bridge. It was brutal. It was efficient. It was quirkless. Somewhere in the observation room, the teachers were watching. Who is that kid in Zone B? Midnight asked, leaning forward. No quirk registry. He's fighting, surprisingly well. He's using judo and environmental awareness, Eraserhead muttered, his eyes narrowing on the screen. He's not overpowering them. He's outthinking them. He's targeting structural weaknesses. But will it be enough? President Mike asked. Because here comes the real test. Phase 3, the variable. The ground shook. It wasn't a vibration. It was a convulsion. Izuku skidded to a halt, stabilizing himself against a lamppost. The dust in the air suddenly thickened, choking out the sunlight. Seismic activity? No. The programmed event. At the far end of the main avenue, the buildings seemed to part. Rising from the dust like a kaiju was the zero-pointer. It was colossal. The scale was illogical. It was taller than the surrounding buildings, its tread width spanning the entire street. Its green optical eyes shone like lighthouses through the gloom. Threat level, extreme, the robot boomed. The voice vibrated in Izuku's chest cavity. Panic, instant and contagious, swept through the battle center. Run! It's huge! That's not worth any points. Let's go! The students broke. The heroes in training turned into frightened children. They fled past Izuku, streaming toward the exit gates. Izuku stood his ground, shielding his eyes from the grit. Tactical assessment. The zero-pointer is an area denial weapon. It has no point value. Engaging it is a net negative in terms of energy expenditure and risk. The logical course of action is retreat. He turned to follow the crowd. It was the smart play. He had enough points. He had proven his combat capability. He just needed to survive the last 2 minutes. He took a step. Oh wow! The voice was faint, buried under the sound of crumbling masonry and screaming students. Izuku froze. He looked back. The zero-pointer had crushed a building as it advanced. Debris littered the street. 40 meters away, trapped under a slab of reinforced concrete, was the girl with the gravity quirk. Uraraka. She was struggling, her face pale, dirt streaked across her cheeks. She was trying to lift the slab, but her quirk was at its limit. She was retching, the nausea side effect incapacitating her. The zero-pointer loomed over her. Its massive metal hand was reaching down, not to grab, but to crush the debris in its path. Distance, 40 meters. Time to impact, less than 5 seconds. Current capabilities, physical intervention insufficient. Leveraging the rock requires 4 seconds. Evacuation requires 3 seconds. Total time needed, 7 seconds. Available time, 4 seconds. The math didn't work. The equation resulted in death. Variable needed, Izuku's mind raced. External force multiplier. He looked at his hands. For 10 months he had prepared. He had eaten the hair. He had meditated on the beach until his mind was a fortress. He had visualized the power not as a weapon, but as a system. All Might had told him, it's like holding a live wire. Izuku closed his eyes for a fraction of a second. He didn't reach for the power with fear. He reached for it with permission. System, online, output, regulate, target 5%. A spark ignited in his stomach. It wasn't the warm, fuzzy feeling of a shonen protagonist powering up. It felt like he had swallowed a lightning bolt. Pain seared through his nerves, hot and electric, but he didn't let it explode. He clamped down on it with his mind. Don't pull it. Spread it. Let it flow like water. Fill the vessel. Red veins glowing with energy traced their way up his legs, across his torso, and down his arms. Green sparks of electricity began to arc off his skin, crackling with the sound of a whip crack. His eyes snapped open. The irises glowed a toxic, luminous green. Full cal 5%. The logic center of his brain, the part that said run, went silent. The hero center of his brain, the part that said save, grabbed the steering wheel. He moved. The concrete beneath his feet shattered. He didn't run, he vanished. The air displaced with a sonic thrum. He crossed the 40 meters in a single heartbeat. He appeared next to Uraraka. The wind from his arrival blew her hair back. She looked up, eyes wide, seeing the boy she thought was quirkless now wreathed in green lightning. Can you move? Izuku asked. His voice sounded distorted, layered with a static growl. My leg. She gasped. Izuku looked up. The 0-pointer's hand was descending. It was the size of a bus. He couldn't lift the rock and carry her out in time. The hand was too close. Change the parameters. If he couldn't move the hostage, he had to move the threat. Izuku looked at the robot. Most people would punch the face. It was the dramatic target. Inefficient, Izuku's mind calculated at hyperspeed. The face is armored. The center of mass is too high. To stop a vehicle, you destroy the transmission. He crouched. The power of one for all screamed in his muscles, demanding release. It felt like his bones were vibrating at a frequency that would shatter glass. Hold it. 5%. No more. He channeled power into his legs. Smash. He launched himself. He didn't jump up. He jumped forward, low to the ground, like a missile. He aimed for the tread mechanism on the robot's right side, the drive wheel that pulled the massive tracks. He collided with the steel axle. He pulled his right arm back. He felt the power swelling, trying to spike to 100%. He fought it. If he used 100%, he would lose the arm. If he lost the arm, he couldn't extract the hostage. Limit output, 10%. Just for the impact. Detroit. Impact. His fist connected with the axle pin. Boom. The sound was deafening. The steel shattered. The force of the punch didn't just break the axle. It sheared the entire drive assembly off the chassis. The massive tread snapped with the sound of a gunshot. The 0-pointer lurched. With its right drive destroyed and the left still engaging, the robot spun violently to the right. The centrifugal force threw the upper body off balance. The giant hand missed Uraraka by 2 meters, crashing into the street beside her. The shockwave lifted the debris slightly. The robot groaned, metal twisting, and toppled sideways, crashing into the row of buildings adjacent to the street. It lay there, tracks spinning uselessly in the air, smoke pouring from its undercarriage. Izuku landed on the side of a building, his magnetic saws which he didn't have, but he wished he did replace by pure grip strength and friction. He kicked off the wall, backflipping down to the street. He landed in a crouch next to Uraraka. The green lightning faded. Pain washed over him. His right arm was purple. He hadn't broken the bone, thanks to holding back, but the muscles were torn. Microfractures spiderwebbed across his radius. His legs felt like jelly. Are you safe? Izuku asked, his voice returning to normal, though breathless. Uraraka stared at the fallen giant, then at Izuku. You destroyed it. I disabled it, Izuku corrected, clutching his throbbing arm. Destroying it would have taken too much energy. He grabbed the slab of concrete trapping her. Without the cork active, it was heavy. On 3, he grunted. 1, 2, 3, he heaved. Uraraka pulled her leg free. Thanks, she breathed. Tai, I'm up. Present mixed screams signaled the end. The siren wailed. The dust began to settle. Izuku sat down on the pavement, his adrenaline crashing. He looked at his arm. It was shaking uncontrollably. I did it, he thought. I didn't break. From the observation room, All Might let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. He didn't use 100%, All Might whispered. He adapted. On the first try, Nizu, the principal, took a sip of tea. His beady eyes twinkled. Intelligence and power. A terrifying combination. Wouldn't you agree, Aizawa? Aizawa, wrapped in his sleeping bag in the corner, just grunted. But he didn't look away from the screen. Assessment. The recovery girl arrived on the scene 10 minutes later, handing out gummies to the exhausted students. When she got to Izuku, she looked at his arm. Fractures? She asked, powering up her quirk. Muscle tearing. Hairline stress fractures on the radius, Izuku diagnosed himself. I exceeded my safe operational limit by approximately 5%. Recovery girl kissed his forehead. You're a weird one, Sonny. Most kids with strength quirks turn their bones to powder on the first go. You held back? I had to walk home, Izuku muttered as the stamina drain hit him. Well, you're fine, she said. Just rest for 2 days. No heavy lifting, Izuku nodded. He stood up, refusing a stretcher. He walked out of the gate. He saw Bakugo standing by the exit. Bakugo was staring at the fallen 0-pointer. He looked quiet. When Izuku passed, Bakugo didn't yell. He didn't explode. He just watched Izuku walk away. The silence was louder than any scream. The variable result. 1 week later, Izuku sat at the dinner table. His mother, Inko, was pacing back and forth, wringing her hands. I made katsudon, she said for the 3rd time. Are you hungry? I'm fine, Mom, Izuku said. He was staring at a fish on his plate, dissecting its skeletal structure with his chopsticks. Performance analysis. Written exam, 98%. Expected rank first. Practical exam, 52 villain points confirmed. This is slightly above average. Is it enough for Class 1A? Or will I be relegated to Gen Ed? The letter had arrived 10 minutes ago. It was sitting on the table, unopened. Izuku, Inko said, stopping. Just open it. Whatever happens, you did your best. Izuku took a deep breath. My best is irrelevant. The result is binary. Pass or fail. He picked up the envelope. He used a letter opener to slice it cleanly. He pulled out a small holographic projector disc. He placed it on the table. A hologram sprang to life. I am here. As a projection, All Might filled the room, wearing a yellow suit that clashed violently with the Midoriya dining room decor. Young Midoriya, you have waited long enough. The results are in. Izuku leaned forward. First, the written exam. You scored a near-perfect 98%. Incredible. A tactical mind indeed. Izuku didn't smile. Standard. Second, the practical exam. You acquired 52 villain points. A respectable score. You passed the cutoff easily. Inko let out a sob of relief. Oh, thank goodness. Izuku let out a breath. I passed. But wait! All Might shouted, leaning into the camera. If that were all, it wouldn't be a hero exam. We are not just looking for people who can fight. We are looking for people who can save. The hologram shifted. A video clip played. It was the moment Uraraka was trapped. The screen showed the other students running away. It showed the 0-pointer descending, and then, it showed Izuku. He didn't run away. He ran toward the danger. The green lightning. The calculated strike to the tread. You faced an overwhelming threat to save a stranger. You risked your own success for the sake of another. This is the essence of a hero, and for that, All Might slammed his hand on the desk. The judges have awarded rescue points. Numbers scrolled on the screen. Izuku Midoriya, 60 rescue points. Izuku's eyes widened. 60? Total score, 112 points. All Might bellowed. This is the highest score recorded in UA history since me. All Might extended his hand toward the screen. Izuku Midoriya. You optimize your way to the top. Welcome to your hero academia. The hologram faded. The room was silent. Inko burst into tears, hugging Izuku so hard the chair nearly tipped over. You did it! You did it! Izuku sat there, feeling the warmth of his mother's hug. He looked at the blank projector disc. 112 points. He smiled. It wasn't the arrogant smirk of Bakugo. It wasn't the polite smile of All Might. It was the satisfied smile of a craftsman who had built something that worked. Optimization complete, he whispered. The boardroom. At UA High, the teachers were reviewing the scores. Aizawa Shota held Izuku's file. 112 points, Aizawa muttered. He broke the record. He's got potential. President Mike cheered. Did you see that punch? It was precise. He took out the tread. He hesitated, Aizawa said, dropping the file on the table. The room went quiet. He analyzed, Niza corrected from his chair. He calculated the risk. And then he acted. That hesitation wasn't fear, Aizawa. It was math. Aizawa looked at the photo attached to the file. Izuku's eyes were cold, sharp. Math or not, Aizawa said, zipping up his sleeping bag. If he thinks he can treat hero work like a calculus problem, he's going to have a rough time in my class. The real world doesn't have an answer key. He stood up. Put him in 1A. Let's see if he breaks. The door to Class 1A was massive. Standing before it, Izuku Midoriya adjusted the strap of his yellow backpack. He didn't look at the door with the wide-eyed wonder of a child entering a candy store. He looked at it with the critical eye of an engineer assessing a fortification. Height, approximately 4 meters. Width, 2.5 meters. Material, reinforced steel alloy, likely blast-resistant. Psychological warfare, Izuku muttered, noting the sheer scale. The architecture is designed to make the students feel small. It enforces the hierarchy immediately. Yue is the giant, you are the ant. Adapt or be crushed. He checked his watch. 8:15. 15 minutes before the first bell. He was on schedule. He gripped the handle and slid the door open. It moved silently on well-oiled tracks. Inside, the classroom was already buzzing with the chaotic energy of adolescence. Don't put your feet on the desk. The voice was familiar. Tenya Ida? The blue-haired boy from the entrance exam was chopping the air with his hand, lecturing Katsuki Bakugo. Bakugo was leaning back in his chair, feet propped up on the polished wood, a sneer plastered on his face. Ha! You gotta stick up your ass for eyes? It's disrespectful to the upperclassmen who use these desks. And to the craftsmen who built them. Craftsmen? You think I care about some carpenter? Bakugo scoffed. What junior high are you from anyway? The Academy for Losers? I am from semi-private academy. My name is Ida Tenya. Sama? A stuck-up elite, huh? I'll have fun crushing you. Crushing me? You truly want to be a hero? Izuku stepped into the room. He didn't shrink away. He walked with the measured gait he had practiced on the uneven sands of Dagoba Beach. Ida spun around, sensing the new arrival. Ah. You. The room went quiet. Bakugo's eyes snapped to Izuku. The sneer didn't vanish, but it tightened. A flicker of recognition, and something darker, like threatened territory, passed through his red irises. Good morning, Izuku said, nodding to Ida. I see the seating chart is posted on the blackboard. Efficiency. Ida marched over. Midoriya, correct? I must apologize. During the entrance exam, I misjudged you completely. I thought you were merely muttering, but you had perceived the true nature of the test, the rescue points. I was blind to it. You were the superior candidate, the class whispered. Superior candidate? That guy? Izuku adjusted his collar. It wasn't about superiority, Ida. It was about reading the mission parameters. The briefing mentioned heroism. Combat is only one facet of the job description. Logistics and rescue are the other 70%. Ida blinked, pulling out a notebook. 70%. Interesting statistic. Deku, Bakugo growled. Izuku turned. He met Bakugo's gaze. In the past, this was where he would have flinched. He would have stammered a Kaken. Hello, Katsuki, Izuku said calmly. I see you made it in. Based on your combat score, I assumed you would. Bakugo's feet dropped from the desk with a heavy thud. Don't talk down to me, you pebble. Just because you got lucky with that giant robot doesn't mean you belong here. Luck is a statistical anomaly, Izuku replied, walking toward his assigned seat 18. Repeatable results are skill. We'll see which one it was soon enough. Bakugo's hands started to smoke. You want to test that right now? Oh. It's you! The tension broke as Ochako Uraraka appeared in the doorway. She beamed, rushing over to Izuku. The plain-looking boy. You passed. That punch was amazing. Like kaboom. And then you were like whoosh. Izuku allowed a small, polite smile. Uraraka-san. Good morning. I trust your nausea has subsided? Yeah. Recovery girl fixed me up. She looked around. I wonder who our teacher is? I hope they're nice. Izuku sat down at his desk. He opened his bag and pulled out a fresh notebook labeled UA Confidential. Teacher profiles. Nice is irrelevant, Izuku murmured. Competent is what matters. He felt a presence. A distinct lack of presence, actually. A void in the ambient noise of the hallway. If you're here to make friends, pack up and leave. The voice was dry, tired, and came from the floor. The class froze. Lying in the doorway, wrapped in a yellow sleeping bag like a metamorphic caterpillar, was a man. He had messy black hair, bloodshot eyes, and a stubble that spoke of 3 days without sleep. He sucked on a jelly nutrition pouch with the enthusiasm of a man on death row. It took you 8 seconds to quiet down, the man said, unzipping the sleeping bag and standing up. He wore all black. A utility belt. A scarf made of a strange, fibrous material. Izuku's eyes narrowed. Eraserhead. The Erasure Hero. Underground Specialist. Focus, ambush tactics and quirk nullification. Logic-driven. Time is a limited resource, the man said, stepping behind the podium. You lot are not rational enough to understand that yet. I'm your homeroom teacher, Aizawa Shota. Homeroom teacher? The class chorused in shock. Aizawa reached into his sleeping bag and pulled out a stack of blue gym uniforms. Put these on, he said, tossing them to the front row. And meet me on the P grounds. What about orientation? Uraraka asked. The ceremony? Aizawa paused at the door. He looked back, his eyes landing briefly on Izuku. UA is a freestyle school, Aizawa said. That means I don't have to adhere to traditions. If you want to be heroes, you don't have time for ceremonies. The threat assessment. The P grounds were vast, an open expanse of dirt, and white lines under the harsh morning sun. Class 1A stood in their blue tracksuits. Most looked confused. Izuku was stretching his hamstrings. A quirk assessment test? The class repeated. Middle school standardized tests are illogical, Aizawa droned, looking at a clipboard. They prohibit the use of quirks, creating a disparity between your physical potential and your actual capability. The Ministry of Education is run by bureaucrats who have never been in a field combat situation. He turned to Bakugo. Bakugo. You finished first in the entrance exam combat points. What was your softball throw in junior high? 67 meters, Bakugo grunted. Try it with your quirk, Aizawa said, tossing him a ball. Anything goes as long as you stay in the circle. Bakugo walked to the circle. He stretched his arms. A cruel grin spread across his face. Die. Boom. He combined the throw with a massive explosion, propelling the ball like a cannon shot. 705 meters, Aizawa read from his device, showing the screen to the class. Awesome. We can use our quirks? This is gonna be fun. 700 meters? That's insane. The air filled with excitement. Izuku stopped stretching. He stood up straight. Mistake, he thought. They used the word fun. Aizawa's expression darkened. His hair seemed to float slightly. Fun? Aizawa whispered. The word carried across the field like a cold wind. You have 3 years to become heroes. You think it's going to be all fun and games? He lowered the device. Right. New rule. The student who ranks last in total score will be judged to have no potential and will be instantly expelled. Huh? Expelled? Uraraka cried out. But it's the first day. That's not fair. Natural disasters aren't fair, Aizawa retorted. Villain attacks aren't fair. Accidents aren't fair. Heroes are the ones who correct the unfairness of the world. If you want to hang out at a burger joint, go home. He scanned the line of students. His gaze lingered on Izuku. Welcome to the hero course, Aizawa said. Now, show me what you've got. Izuku analyzed the threat. Expulsion. Is it a bluff? Yue has a record of high expulsion rates. Aizawa specifically is known for expelling an entire class last year. Probability of bluff, 40%. Probability of genuine threat, 60%. Conclusion, do not place last. He looked at Mineta Minoru, the small boy with grape balls on his head. He looked at Hagakure, the invisible girl. The physical baseline without quirks is the variable. I have to outperform the specialists in general athletics and maximize my score in the power tests. Test 1, 50-meter dash. Ida Tenya stepped up to the line against Azuite Tsuyu. Engine boost. Ida shouted. Result, 3.04 seconds. Fast, Izuku noted. Linear acceleration is top tier. Next up. Izuku Midoriya vs Katsuki Bakugo. They stood at the starting line. Don't cry when you eat my dust, Deku, Bakugo hissed, sparks flying from his palms. Focus on your own lane, Katsuki, Izuku replied, staring down the track. Use the system, Izuku commanded his body. He closed his eyes for a microsecond. He visualized the switchboard. Full cowl. Output 5%. Location, lower body only. The green lightning flickered around his calves, hidden mostly by the tracksuit pants, but the air pressure around his feet changed. Start. Boom. Bakugo launched himself backward with explosions, using the recoil to propel himself forward. It was a chaotic, violent propulsion. Izuku didn't explode. He vanished. His feet dug into the dirt, tearing up clods of earth. The one for all energy acted like a hydraulic piston in his muscles. Step. 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 He was a green streak. Bakugo was fast, flying through the air. But flight had air resistance. Running, when optimized with super strength, had traction. The robot called out the times. Bakugo Katsuki, 4.13 seconds. Midoriya Izuku, 4.02 seconds. Bakugo skidded to a halt, tumbling on the dirt. He looked up at the board. What? Bakugo roared. How did he beat me? He just ran. Izuku exhaled, steam rising from his skin. He deactivated the quirk instantly to conserve stamina. Ground-based propulsion offers superior initial torque compared to aerial recoil, Katsuki, Izuku said, walking back to the line. Physics. Aizawa watched from the sidelines. His eyes narrowed. He used the quirk, Aizawa noted. But only in his legs. And only for the duration of the sprint. No recoil damage. No broken bones. Controlled. This contradicted the file. The file said Midoriya shattered his arm and legs in the entrance exam. Did he learn control in a week? Or is he hiding something? Test 2, grip strength. Izuku took the dynamometer. If I use 100%, I will break the machine in my hand. If I use 0%, I will score average approximate 45 kilograms. Solution micropulse. He squeezed. As the grip tightened, he flashed 5% into his forearm flexors. Beep. 306 kilograms. He handed it back. Next to him, a massive boy with multiple arms, Shoji, scored 540 kilograms. Respectable, Izuku nodded to Shoji. Your multilimb muscular compounding is impressive. Shoji nodded back silently. Test 3, standing long jump. Bakugo blasted himself across the sandbox. Aoyama used his naval laser to propel himself. Izuku stood at the line. Full cowl 5%. He jumped. He didn't just clear the sandbox. He cleared the grass patch behind it. He landed in a perfect parkour roll, dissipating the momentum, and stood up. Result, 70 meters. He jumps like a grasshopper, Ajri noted, placing a finger on her chin. Test 4, repeated side steps. Mineta dominated this with his bouncing balls. Izuku used pure agility. His reaction time, honed by dodging Takeda's bamboo sword for years, allowed him to score high, though not first. The climax, the ball throw. The sun was climbing higher. The class was starting to realize something. Midoriya Izuku wasn't flashy. He didn't shoot ice or fire. He didn't have engines. But he was consistently in the top 3 of every test. He's like a machine, Kaminari whispered to Kirishima. He's not even sweating. He's manly, Kirishima grinned. Izuku walked to the circle for the ball throw. This was the test that mattered. This was the test where raw power shone. Midoriya, Aizawa called out. Izuku stopped. The entrance exam, Aizawa said, his voice loud enough for the class to hear. You saved the girl. But you shattered your arm and legs to do it. The class went silent. They remembered the broken limbs. You have a powerful quirk, Aizawa continued, walking closer. But it's volatile. If you use that power here, you'll break your arm again. If you break your arm, you can't complete the remaining tests. If you can't complete the tests, you will be last. And you will be expelled. He stared at Izuku with cold, dry eyes. So, what will you do? The rational move is to throw it normally and accept a mediocre score. Izuku looked at the ball in his hand. He's baiting me, Izuku analyzed. He wants to see if I'm a liability. He's testing my risk assessment. I appreciate the concern, Sensei, Izuku said. He stepped into the circle. He took a deep breath. Wind up. Hip rotation. Shoulder torque. He started the motion. It was a perfect pitcher's form. As his arm came forward, he prepared to channel one for all. System, activate. Suddenly, the system crashed. The hum of power in his veins vanished. The live wire feeling was cut. Izuku stumbled mid-throw. The ball left his hand with only his natural strength. It flopped onto the grass. 46 meters. What? Izuku blinked. He tried to summon the power. Nothing. It was like the quirk had been deleted. He looked at Aizawa. Aizawa's hair was floating. His eyes were glowing red. The scarf around his neck seemed to writhe like a snake. I erased your quirk, Aizawa said. The class gasped. Erase her head, Izuku said, realizing. Visual contact nullification. That's right, Aizawa said, stepping into the circle. I watched the footage. You're a reckless cannon. You have zero control. When you save someone, you become a victim yourself. You expect others to save you after you break? There is no I in rescue when you are a liability, Aizawa snapped. I'm returning your quirk. You have one more throw. Get it over with so I can expel you. Aizawa blinked. His hair fell. The pressure returned. Izuku stood there. The class watched in pity. Bakugo watched with a strange mix of anger and anticipation. He thinks I'm a cannon, Izuku thought. He thinks I'm going to break. Izuku looked at his hand. He clenched it into a fist. He's wrong. I'm not a cannon. I'm a rifle. Sensei, Izuku said quietly. Aizawa paused. You said I have zero control. You are basing that on old data. Izuku picked up the ball. He didn't wind up wildly this time. He stood in a focused, martial stance. Optimization. Izuku recited his internal code. Minimizing collateral damage. He started to throw. His hips turned. His torso twisted. His arm whipped forward like a lash. The power slept. His elbow passed his ear. The power slept. The ball reached his fingertips. Now, smash. He channeled one for all. Not into his arm. Not into his body. He focused 100% of the output into the tip of his index finger. Snap. The air exploded. A sonic boom rippled across the field, kicking up a dust storm that forced the other students to shield their eyes. The ball vanished. It tore through the sky, piercing the clouds. Izuku stood in the circle. Smoke rose from his hand. He turned to Aizawa. He held up his hand. His index finger was purple, swollen, and clearly broken, but the rest of his arm was pristine. He clenched his other 3 fingers into a fist, leaving the broken one extended. I can still move, Izuku said, his voice steady, masking the pain. I am not a victim, Sensei. Aizawa's eyes widened. A slow, terrifying grin spread across his face. Beep. Aizawa held up the device. 705.3 meters. You beat Bakugo by 0.3 meters, Zero gasped. He focused the power into a single point, Ida analyzed, adjusting his glasses. He sacrificed a finger to preserve the arm. That is, extreme tactical efficiency. The meltdown. DKU. The scream ripped through the air. Bakugo was running. Explosions crackled in his palms. His face was twisted into a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. You bastard! Tell me how you did that! Since when do you have a quirk? He was fast. He was lethal. Izuku saw him coming. Threat, incoming. Lethal intent confirmed. Izuku didn't run. He didn't raise his broken finger. He stepped forward. As Bakugo lunged with a right hook explosion, Izuku dropped his weight. He stepped inside Bakugo's guard. Close quarters combat. Takedown variation 4. Izuku grabbed Bakugo's outstretched arm with his good hand. He used his shoulder to check Bakugo's chest, knocking the wind out of him. Then, he swept Bakugo's legs. But before Bakugo hit the ground, a white cloth ribbon whipped around Bakugo's torso. Snap! The cloth went taut. Bakugo froze, bound tight like a mummy. The explosions died instantly. What the? Bakugo struggled. Aizawa stood there, holding the capture weapon. His hair was floating again. Jesus, Aizawa muttered. Don't make me use my quirk so much. I have dry eye. Let me go! Bakugo roared. He's lying. He's been quirkless for years. He tricked me. He didn't trick you, Aizawa said, his voice cold. You assumed. That was your mistake.